Hare Krishna. Rashmi Hare Krishna Prabhu asked me to speak something of remembrances of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. And so I'll do that. If to forgive the lack of attire, it happens to be around 40 degrees here right now. So I'm doing the best under conditions. Namam Sivarama Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vicharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Shatarine Vanchaka Patrubhyasya Kripasimdhaveva Chapitam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Well, all of these remembrances start off with the same first line. I first met. Okay, I'm looking at my notes. We first met sometime in 1980, at which time His Holiness was visiting the UK. I had also just come to the UK. And that was 1980. I'd come from America. I can't really remember very much. I do remember one thing, and that was that he was with a devotee who was giving massages. Sorry, a strange thing to remember, but that's what I was remembering. He was traveling with a devotee, someone who I don't think I've seen since. And of course he was a Indian sannyasi, Indian devotee, which was still relatively rare at that time in ISKCON. But I do remember that we really started to bond in the following year. Now I had a friend who I'd known from Chicago, my godbrother Shravananda Prabhu, who since has passed away. And he fundraised for Calcutta and Mayapur in India, and he came to Chicago, and I got to know him in Chicago. He was the one who arranged to have my deities, Launitai Gorhari, carved, my beautiful little Gornitai deities. Not so little, but and it was in 1980 that I asked him to do that, and in 1981 I went to Calcutta to collect them. He had them there. They weren't fully painted as yet. Rancho Prabhu completed the painting when we brought them back to the UK, but I'm right with the dates. But he was residing at BBT at that time, and he was serving in the BBT, of which Bhakti Charu Maharaj was in charge. Now I'm talking about the Bengali BBT, which was centered in Calcutta. And they had a premises, a building. I was staying there, and I remember it well because I would spend the whole day on the roof, sitting in the sun, looking at the, reading and looking at the many hawks and eagles that are in Calcutta flying overhead. It was quite a tall building, so I would look down on others. It was, I loved Calcutta. It was almost like home for me. And then, needless to say, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was there. And I remember a car ride, we'd gone somewhere, and he was telling me about the instructions Srila Prabhupada had given him for translating his books into Bengali. And there were typical issues. I can't remember what they were, but he was dealing with those at the time. So I was staying there. From there, I took the deities to Puri. And then there was Mayapur Festival, and Vrindavan, the Mayapur Festival, and after Mayapur Festival, I came back to Calcutta. We had very interesting discussions. There was still at that time some difficulty, disagreement between the members of Charu Swami Maharaj, godbrother of B.R. Shidhar, of Srila Prabhupada, and ISKCON. And he had a good relationship. He knew Shidhar Swami Maharaj from earlier. He had gone to him and so on. And we had some talks about that situation. I remember having discussions about cosmology, and particularly what Srila Maharaj had spoken about cosmology, because Prabhupada had sent devotees over to him to get his perspective. He was a very advanced and realized Vaishnava. But the most significant thing was at that time was that I had Gornitai, but I had nothing to travel with them, especially to bring them back to the UK. So Maharaj immediately offered, in his very typical hospitable way, that I'll get my carpenter and I'll get him to make a nice box. So carpenter came and he made a box. Boy, did he ever make a box. I mean, that thing was 10 kilos. And I was carrying it as hand luggage, and the deities were inside. Well, they were certainly safe. But it was the only time that I used it. Then I got the current box that we still have after 40 years. And I don't know what happened to the other box. If anyone's curious about what happened to that, many things disappeared between my transition from the UK to Hungary. So we bonded at that time. We became friends, and thereafter he would visit the UK regularly. There was once ISKCON UK went through its second trauma. There was a question of who would be GBC, and the GBC were suggesting that he should be the GBC of the UK. Local devotees at last minute asked that I be. Actually, they already voted Bhakti Charu Maharaj as the GBC, or proposed him. And then at the last minute, these messages came through, and they said, I should do it. I really didn't want to get into a GBC service. I knew what it was going to entail, because I'd been sitting in GBC meetings for the last, that was 87, so for the last 6 years. And, but anyway, then I did accept that. So then Maharaj wasn't particularly involved, but he used to come and visit, and I asked him once. We used to talk about Chaitanya Charitamrita. I love to hear him speak Bengali. I mean, many people spoke Bengali, but the way Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj spoke Bengali, for me, it was like music. That's what I envisaged Chaitanya Charitamrita Bengali to sound like. And once I asked him, I said, Maharaj, I'd like to, you have now disciples in India, in Calcutta, I'd really like you to introduce me to some real aristocratic Bengalis. So he said, okay. And sometime later, he sent me the address. When you go to India, go to these devotees' place. And I did go to India. I didn't go alone. There was about a dozen of us. And we went to those devotees who may know them. We went to Chaitanya Das's house, Chaitanya Das, Malini, etc. Now, their house wasn't the house that you see now, which is a big 4-story building in full bagan, which is a 10-minute drive from the airport. It was very convenient. It was just a 2-room house. There was Malini, Chaitanya Das, then Rukmini, and at that time he was Babai, now Chir Jivan Krishna Das. And we showed up, 10 of us, at this little house. I thought I was, I asked to see some aristocratic Bengalis. I thought I was going to come to a palace. But here I was in a little house, and in the garage of that house was a Montessori school. And that's what Malin was running, a Montessori school. But they put us up. We were there for the whole night. We got to meet Chaitanya Das, who was such a wonderful person, and then he became a real close friend, and the whole family. And of course they fed everybody a wonderful feast. And somehow, I don't know how, we all stayed there for the night. And thereafter, Maharaj encouraged them. Professor Bomik, that was his name. He was a professor at Calcutta University. He was a economics professor, and he then built successive stories on top of the building. The ground floor was made bigger, and another 3 stories, and then the top. So once again, I could spend time on the roof, Calcutta roof. And that then became a haunt for many devotees, many GBCs. No one liked to fly in at all hours of the night and then have to drive all the way to Mayapur. Or even if you went to Radha Govinda Mandir down on Park Street, that was like really far into Calcutta. But here was full bagan. It was 10 minutes away from the airport. There was this huge big house. There was lots of facility. And so I know myself, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Rabindra Suru Prabhu, others would regularly go there and stay. I remember staying there, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, flying together from Puri and coming and staying at Chaitanya Das's. Many devotees stayed there. They all hosted them. In 1997 or 96 for the centennial, we had 300 devotees, 250 Hungarians and 50 Russian, Kazakh devotees, and myself and Govinda Maharaj, and we all flew in to Chaitanya Das's house. And he arranged accommodations down the street in people's homes and everything. It was fantastic. I remember bringing 5 buses to the airport. My point is that Bhakti Charu Maharaj really loved these devotees, and they were very, very close. And usually when I stayed there, if Maharaj wasn't there, I would stay in his room, I would stay in his bed, which unfortunately for me was a little short, because there was a lot of difference between me and Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And but as always, it was a wonderful accommodation. So I got to meet these aristocratic Bengalis, and yes, it was First time I saw something like this, I remember Rukmini was the mother of the house, actually, grandmother. And whenever she would first see Bhakti Charu Maharaj, then she would do arti to him. He would be walking, she would come up, he would stop, she would bow down, beautiful white-haired elderly lady, and ringing bell and doing arti and singing, and she would offer arti to his feet. I saw that at least 10 times. So aristocratic, and it was a really wonderful relationship. So he was GBC, then that means we spent a lot of time across the GBC table, although usually we didn't sit so close together. My sort of sitting buddies were Tamal Krishna Maharaj or Pragosh Prabhu, Govinda Swami Maharaj. They were the ones we used to always stick together, stay in one place. Things got a little too boring, then we'd send jokes to each other via SMS. This is just some of the happenings that go on in GBC meetings. And in 1990, I was the GBC chairman. So what you all know is Bhakti Charu Maharaj's accommodations in Mayapur, that literally that whole floor, that suite of many rooms. I used to stay there. I used to stay there with quite a few devotees that came from the UK. Mostly devotees were there from the UK with me. And so I occupied that apartment for about 2 years. And then at some particular point, he purchased it, and I moved down the hall. There was Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Harikesh Maharaj, and I think I was there or one over. And of course, we would always go there, not always, but we would a lot have lunch. And while Tamal Krishna Swami Maharaj was with us, of course, he was just below. So he was in the corner below. Now, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Maharaj had a very close relationship, because when Bhakti Charu Maharaj joined, first actually he was with Bhavananda Maharaj, and then when Prabhupada saw this Bengali devotee, and at that time he was, there was Nitai Chand Maharaj Swami, but then Goswami, but then it was Bhakti Charu Maharaj, an aristocratic Bengali, and there was Subhad Maharaj, but he was first here in the UK, and then he was also there. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Prabhupada took him in, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj came in March or February, and he took Bhakti Charu Maharaj under his wing. So from that time until Tamal Krishna Maharaj left our association, our company, he was like his older brother, his Shiksha Guru. They had a very intimate relationship. Sometimes Tamal Krishna Maharaj would be very strong with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He would correct him. He really raised him. He trained him. If you listen to the 1977 tapes, there are many exchanges. There are many things that Srila Prabhupada and Tamal Krishna Maharaj are talking and mentioning about first Gopinath, and then later he becomes Bhakti Charu Swami. I think it was Ravindra Swarup Prabhu who coined the nickname Sweetie. He would give different nicknames sometimes to devotees. So yes, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was a real sweetie. And he would often invite us for lunch. I had learned from Tamal Krishna Maharaj how to honor prasadam. I learned what prasadam was supposed to taste like and how to eat. And the Bhakti Charu Maharaj appreciated that because for the most part, Western devotees haven't the faintest idea of what things are supposed to taste like and how they should actually honor prasadam. Our prasadam culture is not really what's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita in great detail. But we had wonderful exchanges, and I loved eating. In Chaitanya Das's, then there was Malini and Rukmini, and there was also Rupa Manjari, who was Malini's younger sister, and they would cook these phenomenal feasts. And same thing, Bhakti Charu Maharaj had brahmachari cooks. They were just out of this world, really out of this world. So we had a wonderful time in exchanging over prasadam. I just did a little homework on the New Brajadam. Bhakti Charu Maharaj came here twice. The first time he came in 2003 in Radhastami. He stayed at the Radharaja's home, one of our Grihastas' homes. And we had a wonderful Radhastami festival with him here. And then he came back at 2013, and I think that's when he was chairman. Now, maybe that was before he was chairman, but he came 2013. He came for our parikrama, or Namhata parikrama of New Brajadam. He was here for Janmashtami. He was here for Srila Prabhupada's Vyas Puja, and he was staying in our guest house at that time. And at one of those occasions or two, I remember that we had this discussion about starting a farming project. He was very keen that this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted, and this was something that he wanted to do. After he came here, I was obliged to go to Ujjain. I had not gone to Ujjain. I'm a very sort of fixed person. I get into a groove. I don't really change very much. I go to Mayapur. From Mayapur, I go to Vrindavan, and that's it. And traveling around India, for those of you who travel around India a lot, it's lost its flair for me. It's very taxing. But we went to Ujjain. We had a wonderful time. I think when I spoke before, he said, okay, come here, stay here. He put me in this huge big suite. I didn't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out, this must be his room. He's putting me in his rooms, although he's got the whole guest house, but he's putting me in his rooms. He was the best host. In terms of hospitality, no one could surpass him. He was like the real embodiment of what it means to really be an ideal host, never thinking or never behaving in the way that, all right, I'll do that. It was always so heartfelt, so much with love and anything you really felt wanted. And I felt embarrassed. He put me in his room. Once again, I was in a shorter bed than I'm used to. but who cares? It was the love that counted. And by then I told the GBC I wanted to resign. This was sort of our rasa in the last years. He kept asking me, please don't go, please don't go. And I told him, I have to, my time's up. I've been there now almost 40 years, sitting in the GBC body. I've contributed what I have. I need to take another step. And then, of course, as always, he would always give in. He wasn't a heavy. He was a sweetie. So he would always acquiesce. We talked about so many things. We talked about Goswami Maharaj. We talked about Srila Prabhupada. We talked about ISKCON. We had our doubts about certain things. We had philosophical agreements. We had some disagreements. He was always very huggable, very lovable. And I spoke to him just a little while. Now I can't remember how long, but it was just a week or two before he came to America, went to America. Didn't tell me that was he was going to do. It was already COVID time. It was a difficult time. Prabhupada, he'd ask Prabhupada once, Srila Prabhupada, what happens how will I realize my Swarup if you're absent, if you're not here? So Srila Prabhupada said, well, when the time comes, when you're ready, I'll come and I'll reveal it to you. So now he's gone, he's moved on. I always found that to be very important information in terms of my own personal spiritual practices, and very inspirational. And he's no longer with us in the same way that he was before. I probably think of him more than I thought of him then. He, Tamar Krishna Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. These are the devotees that I think often about, that I miss. There's not many sweeties, or there's not many sweet devotees who are as sweet as he was. He was a real sweetie. Hare Krishna. Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari 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 Gaur.